Welcome to The Impossible, where we empower others to face the impossible, inspire them to be impossible, and motivate them to do the impossible. I'm Matt, and back again with my brother, Austin Douglas. How you doing tonight, man?
Oh, fantastic. Hello, everyone.
Good. Tonight, we've got kind of a fun episode for you guys. We are bringing back some of the stuff we did last year. We're talking about Team Impossible and some of the charity work we do for kids battling cancer. But as we always do, we've got some even cooler things we're going after this year, and we've got some new impossibles we're facing with some new members of our team that we're very excited to share with you guys. So tonight we have Andrew Monroe. He's a member of the Mid-Ohio Valley community here, and he's a newer member of Team Impossible. He's come on to help us with a lot of our learning in running and endurance events. He's an elite level runner himself, and he's going to be doing some truly impossible things at Relay for Life this year to help raise a bunch of money for kids battling cancer today through Relay for Life. So we're bringing him on to share some of his stories, some of the impossible he's faced in his life, as well as to tell you guys some of the exciting things he's doing at Relay for Life this year. So Andrew, thank you for coming on, sir.
No problem.
Yeah, appreciate you being here. So we always like to start off with getting an idea of where'd you come from, where'd you grow up, and how did you end up here? So what was life like growing up in kind of the Mid-Ohio Valley area?
Well, I actually grew up a little bit of everywhere.
That's true.
Kind of a traveling soul
for
a long, long time. So early on, I faced some rough things growing up. I didn't have a dad. Had a couple of different stepfathers go in and out. My dad, I don't really know him. The only thing that I really know is at one point in time, he tried to kill me as an infant. And my grandfather walked in on him and almost went to prison protecting me. So, right out the gate, didn't have a great time. And then I met my second stepfather somewhere along the way, and I had to watch him effectively kill himself. He had diabetes and just refused to take care of himself to the point of he was seeking out sugary foods, and it ended up putting him in a coma. And I had to watch my mom, who is probably the strongest woman I know, one of the strongest women I know. I had to watch her make the decision to pull the plug on him because the doctors said that there is no possible way to bring him back from that. So after that, she met the man who I call my stepfather now, and we began our trip all over the place. Met him about 6 months after we moved to Texas. Moved just outside of the military base down there, Fort Hood, in a town called Killeen. And that's where I kind of got my athletic roots. I got to see a lot of people just running around. It was a very run-heavy community where I was from. We was in a gated community. The community outside was not safe. We lived in a very, very bad neighborhood to the point where there was armed guards outside of our gated community. Wow. And when we went to school, which was off of base at the time, we weren't allowed outside of the school without police protection. Had to have at least one cop per class, and we had to wear uniforms to differentiate us from gangs because we was about 30 minutes outside of Dallas. So a little bit of a rough area, but I got to do some really cool stuff while I was there. I think mentally it made me the person I am, toughness-wise, because as a kid I loved being outside with my brother, and we would go outside in like 110 degrees, and there was a heat advisory, and we'd just be sprinting like it was nothing. It was nothing. And so we got to have a lot of fun down there, came back up here to be with family after he retired from the military and became a cop. And that's when I started being a scholastic athlete. I was super, super sheltered because of the way my mom had went through life. She was scared of everything, and I was the exact opposite. I wanted to do stuff that was scary. And so up until my 8th grade year, I never did any sport. As badly as I wanted to, as badly as my friends tried to convince me to do it, I just wasn't allowed. And finally, about halfway through 8th grade football season, my mom decides we can dip our toes into football. She talked to the coach. Season was almost over, so I got to play 2 games in my 8th grade year. Would have played 3, but one got canceled. And at the time, I had no clue what was going on. So they just kind of like, coach told me go out there, and this is the only play I remember from that season is my buddy just kind of like put me in a place and said, get the ball. I had no clue what I was doing, but it was the very first play, and I made the tackle, but it wasn't like a movie scene tackle. Like I came flying in. He very much came at me, ran me over, and I was on the ground, and it just so happened.
You just held on.
I held on, yeah. So that was my introduction to sports was, hey, you just got murdered, but you made the tackle, so congratulations.
And then you were
back
hooked
off the field. And so I got pulled back off the field immediately because it was very obvious defense wasn't my thing. But as soon as I felt that contact, I fell in love immediately. I wanted to do every sport. So from that point on, I was in every single sport my school offered. So I ran cross country. I played football, which is in the same season. I played basketball. I tried my hand at baseball. I hated baseball. So boring. I couldn't get into it. I ran track. I was even in the marching band. So especially during the fall, I had a lot of huge things to juggle. But what got me into the sport I love the most of running was my freshman year. A teacher of mine convinced me to come out for the track team. And it was very early on. It was weight room stuff. And right then and there, I had to make a decision. Are you going to be a sprinter or are you going to be a distance runner? And I was kind of stuck in the middle. I was the last person to make that decision. I was looking back and forth. Sprinters were having to drag this sled behind them with weights. And I was like, man, that looks pretty hard. I don't know if I should jump into that just yet. And I asked what endurance runners were doing. And the coach himself was an endurance runner. He's like, oh, we're just going to go outside and we're going to run a few miles. I was like, oh, well, if it's that easy, I can do that. And during that run, he ran right alongside me, and he was like, yeah, if you're enjoying this, you should come out for cross country. And at the time, I had no clue what that was. Mm-hmm. He's like, well, it's a lot like track, except you're running through the woods. I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, I don't have to run in circles. He's like, oh, yeah, it's great. It's super easy, and it's a lot of fun. I was like, well, maybe. How far do you run, Because in track, the longest distance is 2 miles. Like, you don't do anything above 2 miles. And that was my race. And he's like, oh, just 3 miles. I was like, oh, well, if it's just 1 extra mile, I can do that. So I signed up for it despite being on the football team. I tried to balance both. And right off the bat, my first practice, I realized that this teacher, this guy I respected so much and believed everything that was coming out of his mouth, he was a liar. The very first practice, he had me run 5 miles, and everyone was running real fast, and I was dying and in pain. It was the worst thing I ever felt. But I told myself that from a young age when I first started, I was like, I will at least complete 1 season of every sport. And it's something that I hold people to now, even. My daughter, I've already told her, I've told my fiance that if she decides to try a sport, that she will be forced to complete it, at least for 1 season. And the reason for that is those first few months of training for cross country, I hated it. I wanted to quit every single time I started moving my feet. But now, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I live for it, and I push myself further and farther to feel that exact same pain, to try to feel what I felt those first few months. And if I would have been a weaker-minded person and allowed myself to slip back into comfort, I don't know where I would be. I don't know where I'd be in life with my depression, because running has helped a lot with that. I don't know where I'd be in life with my success in coaching. I'm proud to say I'm a very, very successful coach in different sports. I have a very good win-loss record throughout all of those sports, and I've just started. So it's a little high and tight of me to say, but I plan on continuing that. But without running, without that attitude that running gave me, I don't think I'd be in the same spot. So I went and I ran cross country that first year, and I was absolutely terrible. I was getting like 21, 22-minute 5Ks and like getting 40th place out of 200, 300 people. Just, all in all, felt like it wasn't my sport. And my mom talked to me about transferring back to where she grew up, Trimble. And at the time, I'd only seen Trimble cross country once. And their slowest runner dusted me, like embarrassed me. I was like, why would I want to go to that? I'd be the worst runner. At least here I'm a varsity runner. And I started talking to some of my friends back in Trimble, and they're like, no, like this coach is the reason these guys are that fast. I was like, well, what do you mean? And at that time, he was TVC Coach of the Year one time already. And he'd been doing it for only 5 years, I think. And I was like, okay, maybe, like that's pretty good pedigree. So I went and I moved in with my grandma, who is another one of the strongest women I know. She's just one of my heroes, a cancer survivor, a survivor of a cancer that most people don't survive. She had pancreatic cancer and went into remission and is now believed to be completely cancer-free. And so she's a very, very strong woman in my eyes. I went back and I lived with her for the last years of my high school. So at that time, I was 15 years old, and already I was just visiting my mom. I was living right beside the high school with my grandma. I was running everywhere I went, just because my grandma was at old age. She couldn't drive, and I was at the time too young to drive. And so I would run to the store, literally run to the store and run back with groceries for her. I'd take care of her. And I think that spurred a little bit of my training outside of that. And then I met this coach. And I have a lot of father figures in my life, but to this day, there is not a person who's been more influential. From the moment I met him, he became someone that I respected more than anybody. He didn't just change my running abilities. He changed me entirely. At the time, I was a very agnostic teenager. I didn't know what to believe. I was just deep in depression, as most teenagers are, fighting things that I didn't understand within myself. And then, kind of self-pitying myself for all the things that I dealt with in my life. Because I did have a difficult upbringing, a difficult life, not having a father, and multiple other things. But I pitied myself for it and made me a weaker person. So when I met this guy, he invited me to this thing called Young Life. I was like, what's that? And he's like, it's a Christian youth group ran by the college. College students come and they teach you and they hang out and they feed you. And I said, I'll think about it, but what are they feeding us? And he's like,
as any good runner would.
yeah. And he's like, every week we have at least pizza. And I host it at my house, so if your parents are uncomfortable, they'll know that you're with me. So I went and I tried out, and at the time I just didn't understand what all this was about, and everyone was so involved with Jesus, and all of the cross country team was there. So I was like, all right, this, I'll at least use this as team bonding.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the years, I slowly, started falling back in love with Jesus, and then I got my brother to come out. And through that, my brother, who is my best friend, joined cross country, which meant the world to me because, as you guys seen, he's not built like a runner. He's not a runner, and he hates it. But he did it because he wanted to be around me more. And through that young life, I got to see something that was one of the most emotional and happy moments of my life. We went to this camp in New York, Young Life Camp, and at the end of the camp, my brother, who was like me when I first started, a non-believer, stood up and confessed to everyone that he now believed in Jesus Christ. And that week turned him. So, for me, who is a very religious person in the aspect of I have my beliefs, and I hope that people in my family share those beliefs because of what I believe in the afterlife. I want to see my brother for eternity, not just, have my brother be gone one day. So, when he stood up and the spotlight went on him, I just started bawling, man, because to me, that meant even if something were to happen to him, I would still have him. And my brother has fought a lot of medical diseases throughout his life. He was thought at one time, when he was just a toddler, that he would never be able to walk. He would never be able to form full sentences. And he would never be a functioning person in society. And as you guys have seen, he's moving around just fine. He's a stocky guy. He is very intelligent. He has a day job. He has his own life. Yeah. So that was my first impossible, was my brother. My best friend told all of those doctors, all of these specialists that said he has too much wrong with him, that they have no idea what they're talking about. He had brittle bones. He broke a bone from sitting down too hard in his leg. And he lost his finger because he didn't understand the glass was sharp, and he smacked his hand on glass and it severed his finger off. And through all of that, he ran cross country with me. He played basketball. And something that no one thought would happen, he entered a regular high school. And for some people, that's a given. That's something that it just happens. You go to high school. But for my brother, like others in my family, they weren't supposed to go to high school. They were supposed to stay in this specialized school until either 22 or they were smart enough to be put in specialized classes in a regular high school. So before he even got to high school, was told, you can go back to school. So his freshman year was my junior year, and I got to walk my brother into his first class. So, right off the rip, from when I first started growing as a young man, I got to see impossible take place. And then onto my running, the coach dropped my time from a 21 to a 19 in a year.
And that's for a 3 mile or a 5K or
5K, 3.1 miles. So I went from a 21 on a good day to averaging a 19 in 1 year of training.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And I kept dropping from there, and to the point where my junior and senior year, our school wasn't just a school that you had to face. If we were at a meet, we were the school you had to beat. And there's 8 to 12 schools at every meet. It was to the point where first meet of my senior year, as we were unloading our bus, another school started loading their bus back up because we showed up. They left the meet because we were there. And to put this in perspective, cross country is a little bit like golf. You want to score the lowest points to win, and your top 5 runners are scorers. You get points based off of place. So first place gets 1 point, so on and so forth. We were averaging under 20 points, which means the first 10 runners to come in every single meet, my junior and senior year, our 5 scoring runners were in there. We were just dominant. We owned the TVC all 3 years that I was at Trimble. We went to districts, we went to regionals, and the last year we went to state. And junior and senior year, we went to Nike Cross Nationals and competed in a national race, which was sometimes even the best running team in the state doesn't get invited to. It is a very small group, a very elite group. And we didn't just get invited as individuals, we got invited as a team. We broke records at my high school. We have the fastest average team time and fastest combined team time in our school's history. And at that time, we also had a very successful football program. And of course, they got all the glory because football's a lot more exciting to watch than, oh, look, he's going into the woods. Oh, he's coming back out. That's it. We're done. Let's go home. Yeah. So, obviously, they got a lot more of the glamour, but we were more successful than them. In football, you face one opponent, and it's a win or it's a lose. In cross country, you face up to 12 different teams, 300-400 opponents, and it's a place. And we showed up after every race, sometimes 2 races a week, and we brought home a first place trophy almost every time. And my senior year, it kind of got to our heads. And I think it was a good thing that it did. My senior year, we went to TVCs and got second. For the first time for our team in 6 years, we weren't TVC champions. We felt like failures. We got beat by Belpre, who, no offense to these guys, were not on our level. They had absolutely no reason to be in that race with us. We just got big-headed, we got stupid, and we slacked off. And so when it came to performance day, we lost. And for me, it stuck out because it was the first race that my mom came to ever. I have 6 siblings, and I was one of 2 runners that year in my family. My mom just did not have time to be at these things, but for this one she did. And she congratulated us, but it was out of not understanding. And I was like, Mom, like, this isn't what I wanted you to see. We failed. In our eyes, we failed. In most, perspectives, that's really good. But for us, that was against the grain, against the training. That was a failure to us.
Yeah. Well, it's like even you say, like, regardless of the placing, you showed up in what sounds like the completely wrong mindset.
Exactly.
With the completely wrong approach to training for that event.
Exactly.
So even if you had gotten first, it may have been even hard to call it a failure, if that's kind of the mindset you guys were or it'd have been hard to call it a success, even if you'd have gotten first. And like you say, sometimes we need those moments in life to check us a little bit and show us, oh, hey, like even at the top of the top, even at the best level, you've still got to maintain that discipline, still got to maintain that mindset, still got to maintain that daily approach to your craft.
And that's exactly what it did for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
There's 7 varsity runners because if there's a tie within the top 5, they go to number 6, number 7. Our 7 runners smacked ourselves in the face, said, what is wrong with you? And then we swept everybody the next race. The very next race, we didn't just beat our rivals, who is a school that has no football team. They are just a cross-country school. But we beat the crap out of Belpre. Our 7th runner beat their 2nd runner. And we fully took it out on them for beating us. But it was because after they beat us that next week, we took it out on ourselves. I pushed myself harder than I ever had. And as a senior and as a captain of that team, they seen it. They pushed themselves harder than they ever had. There was no joking like the week before. There was no playing around. We put on our business faces with a goal in mind, and we rode that wave all the way to the last race, to the point where we didn't do as good as we wanted to at states or nationals, but we still felt accomplished because of our times. And only 2 of us graduated on the men's side that year. And he's a very successful person even now. He's in the military. And every time we talk, that's the first thing we talk about, because it was one of our proudest moments. So that is now what I'm chasing again, is myself. It used to be I was chasing times and the person in front of me, the next person up. Now, being away from running for almost 5 years of just sitting around doing nothing, I'm chasing the shadow of myself again. Those old race games, you could race against yourself in the time trials, and it would show that previous version of yourself, and it would help you pace off of that. That is how I approach every race now, and every run, really. And so, as you guys have noticed, I walk away from almost every run pretty disappointed in myself, because I've seen where I can be, and I know I can get above even where I was. So, like, you guys are like, these are really good times, and in a way they are. It takes a lot of work, but for myself, it sucks, because when I race, that's who I'm racing. I'm not racing anybody else. I'm racing myself, and I'm losing right now every time.
Well, I think it's one of those things you know what your potential is.
Yeah.
You know where it can go, you know what it can be, and you know that you can even exceed it. So really anything in the world of performance can be made relative when you look at it's your own potential. Because for me or Austin to hit any of the times you've hit this year in a 5K would be like a life's work for us.
Yeah.
But for you, it's far slower than what you know your potential is. And I think to a point you have to give yourself a little bit of grace there because, like you say, you've been off the path for kind of like 4 or 5 years now, and you're getting back into it. So you're in a good spot. You're putting in the work toward it. You're going through the motions. You're doing the things you know will bring you back there.
Right.
But so you're in a good place right now, doing good work, but it does take that there's the consistent correct action piece, and then there's the overtime piece.
Right.
And it's the overtime that's just, you're putting in that work, putting in the motions now, and it'll get you to where you know you can be.
Well, and I think that is my biggest flaw and grace at the same time, is I could break a record and still kick myself because it didn't feel right.
Yeah.
Or it didn't feel good. And like, when we do our filming and our pictures and stuff like that, and I'm running and I look back at the videos and I'm like, I hate the way I look. Like that looks so slow.
Yeah.
It bothers me a lot.
Yeah. We've got a very competitive mindset. There's a few people that are on the team that we've had on the show before that are very, very competitive mindset. And you're right. It can be kind of a blessing and a curse in some ways, like blessing in the sense that it is always going to force you to push harder, to go farther, to do more, to find more within yourself. But at the same time, it also makes it difficult to find that gratitude in where you are now. I think, it can be, I hate to say it's good and bad. I think it just is what it is. It's why you have the edge you have. And I think sometimes we have to take those things and just embrace it, and use that asset, that ability to help us grow even farther. Now, certainly you don't always want to approach it from I think there's different ways to express it, different ways to embrace it, different ways to live it. You don't always want to approach it from I'm worthless, I need to be better kind of mindset. I think there's a way to be competitive and embrace that competitive mindset without, always going to that negative place. Mm-hmm. I would almost argue there's a way to bring more of a positive kind of motivating spin on it that's going to help build you up more and more and more. What's some of your strategies for that? Like, how do you find this balance of having that extremely driven competitive mindset while not letting that potential negativity of it kind of consume you?
Well, the very first thing I implement for myself is something that I learned from the head coach at Eastern, who I'm currently coaching under. And it's called the 24-hour rule. You can pity yourself or celebrate, depending on the outcome, for 24 hours after whatever it is you just completed. After that 24 hours, you forget about it. It never happened. That race never happened. That game never happened. You're starting over.
It's back to work.
You're starting over. So, competitively, I don't like seeing someone in front of me. And I do remember, I get glimpses back in time of being beaten at the finish line, of the feeling of failure, feeling of specifically seeing my mom at the finish line, knowing I didn't do great. And I hate it. I mean, I used to be in high school to the point where I'd push myself to collapse at the finish line. And I definitely got that side of me more under control now. I don't do that anymore because I know it's very bad for my health and my training. But it's still in there. Mm-hmm. So every time something doesn't go the way I want it to competitively, I use that as fuel for when I'm in a bad state of mind. Mm-hmm. On those Mondays where I'm like, man, I don't want to run. My head hurts. My legs are sore from that last race. I need to take the day off. But that's not who I am.
Yeah.
I don't take days off. I run 7 days a week. It's the only way I reach the mileage I do. And it's personally, for my running style, the only way I'll get back to where I was is no days off. If I take a day off, that's going to turn into 2, into 3, into 4. And I'm going to get back in that same problem that I was in upon completing high school. I finished high school. I said, well, my running career is over. There's no reason to go out and run today. And it turned into no reason to run that week, that month, and then the next 5 years. To the point where I'd see a 5K and I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll show up and I'll jog it. And that's where I was for those 5 years. I didn't train. I just, oh, that's a cool 5K. I'll go out and I'll do that and I'll get like a 25. Be like, oh well, I didn't train, so that's my excuse. I'll get to 24. Well, I didn't train, so. And just a cycle of excuses, and it leaked into my personal life, not just my competitive life. I just started college. When I left high school, I had offers for cross country to multiple schools, and I didn't follow through. I went into the military, and I said, after I get back, then I'll go to college. I came back, and I didn't go to college. And the military, it's something that ran in my family. My stepdad did it. My uncle did it. My grandpa did it. Naturally, I did it. I only served one contract because when I stepped away and I looked at myself, I hated myself. I was a bad person. I wasn't this guy that I knew in high school that was disciplined with his running, his working out, that was disciplined in his personal life, that wanted to accomplish great things. I was a content person who just did what I needed to do.
How do you think you got to that point from being this extremely dedicated, disciplined high school athlete at the top level you can be at? It's interesting to me because normally most people think about you go into the military and you kind of get like whipped into shape. You get more discipline. You get, you get things straightened out. You become a more squared away person. How do you think you went from that squared away, dedicated, disciplined high school athlete entering the military and that you kind of slip off that path and you become somebody that you don't like to look at in the mirror?
When I entered the military, I had passed all of my physical tests with flying colors. I was one of the best runners in my battalion. I could destroy people in the PT test, and I could do it off of just my running alone. So I did the bare minimum because it isn't encouraged to stick out like that. And oftentimes, especially when you enter basic training, it is punished to stick out. You do not want to stick out. The first drill sergeant I met was a female drill sergeant. If you've seen her out and about, a very unintimidating looking individual, like 5'4", if that. Just cute little thing. And she walked up to me and got in my face. This was pre-COVID. And started just ripping me because I was too tall. I'm not that tall. I'm 6 foot tall. But comparatively, I was just too damn tall. Yeah. That was my entrance into the military. So, first couple of PT tests, I was like, no, I got to show these guys what I can do. I was ripping out push-ups. I was ripping out sit-ups. I was ripping out the mile and a half. And I was sticking out. But I was getting called out. And I was getting called out, but more than just drill sergeants. I was making everyone else look bad. I was making my battle buddy look bad. So I just stopped working out. like almost entirely. I did the bare minimum. And I just fell off. But it was because the way my master sergeant put it, in the military, you are a tactical professional athlete. However, when I was training every day, I was just an athlete. There was no tactical to it. I wasn't supposed to blend in. So when I started needing to blend in effectively to survive and be more comfortable, it kind of ripped that discipline away from me and gave me a new discipline. The discipline of you do what you're told. You do what you have to. And then when you clock out, you're cool. That's your free time. Just do whatever. And it's something that you see every day in veterans. My stepfather in the military was a very fit person, but he was fit for the military. So when he retired, he started putting on weight, he started eating, he started having cholesterol problems. That discipline that was forced and a very unique style of discipline wasn't there anymore. And so I experienced the same thing of, well, I retrained myself to have this different discipline, and now there's nothing making me do it, because that discipline was something I didn't want to do. So when it got ripped away from me, I just was like, well, now I don't have to do anything. Yeah. But it also caused a lot of depression, because I didn't know what to do every day. Like, I went to a job I hated, worked myself to death, come home, and just sat and thought. And then my daughter was born. And I took another step back, and I looked at myself again. And I said, if you were her, would you be proud of that? Of this sad, self-pitying individual? And then, what is that going to do to her? Because much like I emulate my mom in many ways, she will emulate me. Is that what I want my daughter to be? And so when I sat in it, I was like, not only do I need to be better for her, but I need to be around. And if I continue this super unhealthy lifestyle, there's no guarantee that I'll be around. There's a very good chance that the amount of time I'll be around is a lot shorter. So immediately I started just, getting back into just little things to take steps. I started, eating healthier. I started cleaning up more. I started taking care of myself. I went through a period where I didn't brush my teeth unless I felt like it. So I'd go sometimes a month without brushing my teeth. Disgusting. And it causes problems now. I have tooth pain because of it. And I have sensitive gums because of it. So I can't scrub my teeth. I have to gently brush my teeth every time I do it. But I do it every day. When I wake up at the same time every day. I go to lunch at the same place. I have the same routine every day. And when it comes to my daughter, I treat her the same every day, even if she's having a bad day, because that's what she deserves, and that consistency is something that should be instilled in a child. It was something that I lacked, traveling all over the place, having different men around the house that, maybe they'd be there for a year. I'd get to know them, and then they'd disappear. And it caused a lot of, especially mental problems. I said, everything that I need to do has to be for her. And so, to this day, I just started college about 3 months ago. I'm going back to college. I don't get the scholarship that I once had. I don't get to run for college like the opportunity I once had, but I'm going back to school to be a teacher. I am already coaching multiple sports. I just finished up a 1-loss basketball season this past winter and a 5-4 football season with a football team that didn't exist 2 weeks before the season started. And that was youth league. Now I am a varsity football coach in a year. So in a way, I'm proud of myself, but I am far from content.
You know what's really cool about that, and I wonder if you've even realized this yourself or not. You described the two different kind of scenarios in your life, two very different points of great significance. One being in the military, where you go into boot camp, you're this super disciplined student athlete, and you go in and you kind of fall back on your traditional training of like, oh, I'm going to, go out and perform at the highest level. And then you find out standing out in that way is not a good thing. And I think there's maybe two ways you could have gone about that. There's the way that you went where instead of like performing at the level you could, you back down to blend in with the level that everybody else is performing at. I think the other way maybe you could have gone about that, in the way you eventually went on to go about that when your daughter was born, was instead of just backing yourself down and trying to blend in with where everybody else was, you could have used your skills and your knowledge and your talents to help build everybody else up to be closer to your level. Then you're still blending in, but you're actually making everybody else around you better in the process.
Right. I took the mentally weak route.
Yeah. And I mean, we all do that. There's, you can look back on that and say, hey, that wasn't the right thing, but you learn from it, you grow from it. We've all been at points points like that in our lives. What's so cool about it is when your daughter's born, you look at her and say, I've got to be better for her. I've got to help build her up into the person I know she can be. And so it's in a way, kind of almost the same situation, but, back in the military, you maybe handled it in the way that looking back, you say, hey, maybe that wasn't the right course of action. Then your daughter comes around and you're able to look at that situation and say, hey, I need to do this for her. I need to help build her up. And so it's like you get a very similar situation, but you have a drastically different approach the second time around, and one that I would argue is a far better approach. I'm sure you agree,
100%.
and one that's now one of the core central foundations of how you live your life every single day.
Mm-hmm. And at the time, I didn't know how to put it into words until I heard a skit done by Kevin Hart. Yeah. And he said, when my first kid was born, it was a boy, and I held my beautiful baby boy, and I thought I would die for you. And then his daughter was born, and he held her, and he said, I would never die for you. I would kill for you. And that's when it really clicked. That is so much worse. Everyone can die for someone they love. But in order to sacrifice your soul and a life your own life, that you are going to spend the rest of it in a small room with disgusting food, to be willing to sacrifice that for someone you love, that's more. That's bigger. That's more impactful. And when you know you've reached that level, when you stare down into this innocent, sweet, beautiful baby girl, and you feel that, not out of malice or hatred for anybody, but out of a protective instinct and love and care, it is, no matter what, no matter who you are, life-changing. You can be a good person, you can be a great person, and it still changes your life. I wasn't a great person. I was a bad person in a bad place, and it completely turned me in 5 seconds. I remember it so well, and I joke with my fiance about it. Waterboy was on.
Great movie.
Yeah, Waterboy was on, and we was watching it, and as my fiance is pushing and holding onto my hand, I'm trying to avoid looking at that disgustingness that is happening. So I'm watching Waterboy because they forgot to turn it off. And right before my daughter comes into this world, and I can't wait to tell her this story, the scene comes on where Waterboy says, and she showed me her boobies, and I liked them too. And then the nurse looked up and turned it off. And so I went from, a little upset 'cause turned it off and comical relief to less than a minute later, I was holding my daughter. And I just got to see her for a split second before they took her to make sure she was okay and to get her to cry, because she didn't come out crying. And to get her to cry, they smacked the bottom of her foot. And I didn't know I had it in me. Immediately, I became super protective. I stood up like I was about to fight this doctor because slapped my little girl's foot. I didn't know what was going on. This was my first time in the delivery room. All I seen was my little girl just got slapped on the foot, and this doctor is about to get thrown out the 3rd-story window. And, I got caught by my fiance's mom, who was in the room, and she kind of like calmed me down. She's like, that's what they do. They got to get her to cry. And I was like, I don't care. Like, you just slapped the first thing she gets to experience is a slap on the foot. I'm going to hurt you. But, looking back, that's a moment I'll never forget. And I'm 100% going to tell my daughter I won't forget because of the Waterboy scene. But in reality, I remember the exact second that she came into this world. I remember the layout of the room. I remember the room number. Because she changed my life to a completely different path, turned me completely around. And I think you can call it a coincidence, you can call it an act of God, or whatever you believe in. But my road doesn't have a name. It has a number. It's 10:35, which is the exact minute and hour that my daughter came into the world. And we lived there before my daughter came into the world.
So that was kind of like, that was almost literally like the flipping of a switch.
Completely.
Like, you're watching this like comedy, ridiculous movie as your daughter's being born.
Ridiculous movie.
Yeah. And nurse looks up, shuts it off. And it's like,
H2O.
so it's like, that's almost like an exact personification of what's happening. She shuts it off. And it's like that whole part of your life is shut off. It's like now the switch is flipped on this new part of your life.
Exactly. It's just gone.
Yeah.
I don't even know that person. And I hate that person. And I joke with my fiance all the time. I tell her I don't know how you're still with me. Because the person that you fell in love with isn't here anymore. Like, I am a different person. But as aggravated as she gets at me oftentimes, because I'm a very difficult person, even now, she continues to remind me that I am that person, but I've grown up. And I have a purpose. So everything that I do is for that purpose, for my daughter. And even when it came down to months and months of arguing back and forth about the name of our daughter, it had purpose. I named her partially after my study, which is Greek mythology. Her middle name is Athena, which is the Greek god of Athens. She was born in Athens. But also, my uncle and his dad, the only stagnant father figures I had and have in my life, are named Zoeth. And so my daughter's name is Zoe Athena, after them. So her name has multiple meanings and multiple purposes. And every time I say her name, even if she's not around, it reminds me of my purpose.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. That's a powerful story. And it's interesting because I don't know that, I think there's different ways that these kind of transformations can happen. Certainly you hear about, and like in your case, this just like flipping of a switch, just like almost like 1 second you're one person, 1 second you're a totally different person. And then, there's other stories, kind of like I would say my personal story, where it was a long, slow, kind of painful road of growth. And I wouldn't say there was any moment for me where it was just like a switch was flipped. It was just like after many, many hours and years of consistent correct action, was like I moved more into and I just become this other person. Mm-hmm. I think either way is perfectly legitimate. I don't know that there is a large difference in the outcome. I think it's just different people in different circumstances are affected different ways. But I think it's really interesting that it was your daughter that had that impact on you. So like my daughter is not even born yet. And it's like I already feel, and it's interesting because I didn't have this feeling at first. Like obviously I was excited, obviously I loved her, obviously all the things, but there was, and I don't even know that it was a moment, somewhere along the way, like my like biological internal feelings and emotions and everything that I am changed and shifted. And I've talked to Lauren about this a lot. I've talked to Austin about this a little bit. It's like at some point, something somewhere inside of me changed along the way. And it's like, she's not even here yet. Yeah. And it's like, there's not a single thing in the world I would not do for her. And everything I do is for her. Like it's just, I've never loved anyone or anything more profoundly than I love her, and she's not even here yet. You think it's like I can feel her move, I can see these ultrasound pictures of her, but still it's like everything
You think it's
is for her.
extreme now?
And
Just
that's what I'm
wait.
saying. Like, I'm sure it's going to be even at another level.
Just wait
once
till
she
the
gets
first
here.
eye contact happens.
Oh my
man.
gosh. Dude, that's literally like the most exciting thing I can even imagine. Like, it's.
I do want to touch on that for a second. I'm like very, very happy for you.
Yeah.
Because you get to experience all of this.
Mm-hmm.
I went through a unique but non-secular
Mm-hmm.
version of that trip of having a child of COVID times.
Oh, yeah.
So I got to see my daughter moving twice. I got to hear her heartbeat through a phone screen.
Wow.
I wasn't allowed to go in.
Dude, I cannot imagine that.
That was in Athens.
I cannot imagine that.
But when I went,
Oh, man.
but when we went up to Columbus, they let me go in.
Okay.
But they only send you to Columbus for the big things.
Mm-hmm.
There was only 2 big things, thank goodness. But that meant I only got to see her move twice. I didn't get a lot of the moments that the average dad would get to have. And yet, I was the one having pregnancy cravings. I was the one who was like, I feel like a really strong hunger for Mexican food right now. And my fiance was like, just get food. Like, food's food. I'm like, no, it has to be Mexican food. Like, I was the one going through, through that. And it happens a lot because it's more of a mental thing just from being around it. Dads all over the world have these experiences. But I didn't even get a lot of the normal stuff. And I still had those experiences. So the fact that people that are close in my life get to experience these, it makes me happier and grateful that we're out of those times and you now get to experience this, because there was a chance that you wouldn't have been able to.
Yeah.
So it means a lot to me, especially.
Yeah, and it's, I guess I never thought about it in like regards to COVID, because dude, I can't imagine not having gotten to experience like this journey, this part of it. And this has been this whole journey that, Lauren and I have been on through her pregnancy is just, that's been like the reward for us, because it's, and we won't go deep into it, but getting to this point was at times just an absolute nightmare. And it's something I'm hoping we're going to get to touch on more and more someday. We talked a little bit about it on Tim's episode, but like, that's one of those pieces of like childhood cancer that is just not addressed enough. It's that infertility piece. And it's like that whole road can just, it's still one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. As much as I've like battled through, that was one of the hardest things. And so I think maybe that's why like my feelings have changed, or part of the reason why my feelings have changed so profoundly, even with just her not even being here yet, is like from day one, I think Lauren and I definitely had a very, very, very deep appreciation of where we were, because we knew, because of how impossible the road was just to get here. So that's definitely a big part of it. But yeah, I can definitely see where if you had not gotten to experience that, like, dude, like I said, I can't imagine how hard that would have been to sit out on it. But I do wonder too, because it sounds like your big moment of change happened when your daughter was born.
Yes.
And I know for me, the person I was 10 years ago would not have been able to appreciate this time I'm in now with and probably not even experience the same level of love for my daughter, with the same intensity and the same passion. That person I was 10 years ago probably would not have been able to feel that in the same way. So I wonder, like, do you think the person you were before that change, was he also maybe just not in the same place mentally and emotionally and spiritually to experience that journey? Is that part of it, or was it just...
I know for a fact he wasn't.
Yeah.
That person was constantly depressed. Nothing made that person happy. It took this. Everything that happened benefited me in the long run. So, in a way, not being able to go in as much as I wanted to, and as mad as it made me, helped personally. And at the time, it truly, truly infuriated a very unhealthy person. Like, there was at one point where I was extremely, extremely upset that I couldn't go in. It was when I found out that my fiance got to hear her heartbeat, and I didn't. And that unhealthy person took it out on my fiance. We got into a fight, and I left. I went and I stayed the night at my mom's house in selfish anger. But looking back now, I may not have got to hear her heartbeat, and she did. But that wasn't her. It was not my fiance. It was the doctors and the experts and all the people in Athens that were saying, no, you can't come in, when the people in Columbus were saying, yes, you could.
Yeah.
And part of that confusion, I think, drove me to that anger. But without that, I don't think the change would have been as extreme.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're in that negative kind of mindset, and you're in, literally, it's a victim mindset is what it is. And it's something we work very hard here to dispel within ourselves every day. We always want to have the hero's mindset, not the victim's mindset. But when you're in that victim mindset, everything that goes wrong in your life is everybody around you's fault.
Yeah.
So it's like you weren't able to recognize that, oh, my fiance would have me in there in a heartbeat if she could. Yeah. Not to, no pun intended. But she would have had you in there in an instant. And you can't recognize that, like, even if you had been able to say, oh, it's the doctor's fault, really it's not even their fault, because they're responding to higher powers than themselves, you know. And it ultimately goes back to the just insanity that was COVID. You know, feel however you will about it. It was just an unbelievable kind of insane situation altogether.
Nothing made sense.
Yeah, nothing made sense to anybody, no matter what side of it you fell on. So because you were in that victim mindset, you couldn't say, hey, this is nobody's fault. But rather it's my responsibility and how I'm going to react to it.
Exactly.
You know, you just took it out on the nearest person, the person nearest you, which happened to be your fiance. And I've been in situations where I would have done the same exact thing. You know, we've all been there. We've all been in that negative kind of victim mindset. But I like what you say, how in a way, going through that hardship, having to work through, fight through, live through that negativity actually made the moment when you did see your daughter, you did get to hold her, you did get to feel her heartbeat. It made that moment even greater. And that just emphasizes how any amount of struggle, hardship, pain, suffering, whatever word you want to put onto it, that can all help us grow, and it can help us become better, stronger, more confident, more capable human beings.
Right. And I listen to podcasts every day. My primary podcast is the Joe Rogan Experience, because
it's not the Impossible podcast.
Well, you don't release enough. Joe Rogan,
Hey, we'll get on it, man.
Joe Rogan releases every day.
Yeah, yeah.
That's fair.
So I
When we
listen
get
to
his
him
kind of
daily.
operating budget, we'll
Yeah,
definitely
true,
come out.
I listen to him daily though. 'Cause
No,
he
Joe
releases
Rogan's
daily.
great. I mean, he literally has set the standard on what podcast can and should be.
100%.
Like he is the highest level.
The epitome.
And what's cool is that there's now podcasts starting to approach that level, like Chris Williamson's podcast. I'm sure there's others out there, but he's set that gold standard, and now there's other people starting to approach that level, which I think is really cool.
So I listen to his podcast every single day, and he says this a lot. And it's not a quote that he originally created, and he acknowledges that, but he says, "Easy times create hard men." And I am not in any way saying that I am a strong or a hard man, but through the easy times that created hard times, that created me, I am proud to say that I am a man, and it is because of all of these things that I've went through. My life started out easy. My life became hard because of that easiness. And it made me the person I am today, to the point where a 5K isn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
I ran a half marathon 2 weeks ago, and it was challenging, and it hurt my leg due to the muscle, just not being strong enough. But that wasn't enough, to the point where I said, you know what I need to do? I need to just take the training wheels off, stop being a baby, and run for 6 hours nonstop. And then maybe I'll get that feeling of I did something hard. So that's what we're chasing. What we're working on right now is a nonstop 6-hour run that's going to turn into, for me at least, an ultra marathon.
Yeah.
Which an ultra marathon normally is a 50 miler, but it's really anything over a marathon distance. And so my goal in a 6-hour run is ideally 40 to 50 miles. Just hit that ultra distance is the goal. And it's because of everything that I went through that it is a goal.
Yeah.
And more beyond that. Without the stuff that I went through, I don't believe mentally that I would be willing, strong enough, or wanting even to do something that many people think is absurd. Which, in a way, it's a little absurd, it's a little crazy. But in a way it's not. Because I am, and this is a foundation of who I am not anybody. I'm just a regular guy with a family that works a 9-to-5 job. But I dedicate a lot of time that most people would spend on their phones or, just wasting away to relax. I dedicate a lot of that time to be in a place where I can say I can do it. And to me, that's the biggest message that I focus on is I am not special. Anybody can do what I do. I had people on my cross-country team in high school. One person in specific, I won't say his name, but at the time he was 300 pounds and a freshman in high school. He came out to the cross-country team and he ran. Cross-country, that's 3 miles, 5 kilometers at least. And with the way our coach trained us, that meant you had to run at least a top of 9 miles. That had to be your base, your long run. You had to run at least 9 miles. So this 300-pound, definitely obese freshman said, I'm going to run cross country. And he wasn't somebody who was winning every race, but he improved. He got faster, and he didn't even really lose weight. He maintained weight, but he became a faster person. And he was, at first walking at the ends of races too. He was racing people at the end of races. When he was crossing the finish line, he was neck and neck with somebody else fighting to try to beat them. And if you would have told him that the year before, he would have laughed in your face. But that's the beautiful thing about what I do and what many, many, many people do. It's running is easy. After you get through the mental one step in front of the other, completing a run is easy. You just got to tell yourself it is. You can't stop. And then maybe if you choose to face this new kind of pain, you can tell yourself, okay, now I'm going to take it further. It's not something you have to do. If you choose to run, that should be enough, because it's discipline-wise very difficult. But if you choose it, it becomes very easy. All you got to do is choose it. So I'm not special. I'm just a regular guy that chose it. And every time it hurts, I smile.
Yeah. And that's something that's a core central piece of our message at Impossible Performances. Every single person has potential in them far greater than they'd ever allow themselves to believe. Mm-hmm. We all have the ability to find our highest level of potential and move one step or multiple steps beyond it. And in fact, that's what we say we're in the business of human potential, is because everything we do is centered around helping everyone we encounter find that highest potential and move beyond it. In fact, that's really the very definition of being impossible. You bring yourself to become somebody who's capable of doing things that were not previously possible for you. Yeah.
At that half marathon we did a couple weeks ago, Austin, you didn't get to see this because it was after I already passed you guys for the last time. But I almost passed out like a mile from the finish line. Like I couldn't hold my eyes open that well. Because I was using all of my energy left into my one leg. Because at that point of the race, my hip had already given out. Like when I passed you guys, I told you, hey, I got a flat tire. Like my hip is not generating any power. This right leg was not stepping forward. It was coming back to underneath of me. That was it. So I think it was about 5 miles left of the race with just my left leg, and I'd never had to do that before. So I was on the verge of like literally collapsing and passing out just because of the exertion it took of this leg is going to be the leg that gets me across the finish line. And it hurt. It hurt so bad. So bad. But when you start a race and you really, really want it, all you got to do is endure. The second you slow down, the second you stop, your race is over. And I told myself that for a very, very long time. I could end my race right now. But what would I have done? And what does that say about me? So, particularly that last mile, because the way the course worked out, you could see the finish line, but you still had to loop back around. Which
that's
was
so evil when they do that.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
That is pure evil
that
when
is
courses
a teaser,
do that.
You could see
the tables of bananas and
I seen the food, the water, the people finishing and stopping.
Yeah.
I was like,
sitting in the trade or the shade.
Yeah. And I was just like, you got to be kidding me right now. because when I seen it was when I came out of this bridge, and I was like, there it is.
Right.
I can
Oh,
see
wait.
it. I'm dumb. And then they're like, no, you got to go all the way
gotta
around,
go around.
actually. You still got a mile left. And I was like, you are horrible people. Why would you do this to somebody?
You're in such an emotionally vulnerable, raw,
was,
stripped back
and, like,
spot at that point in the
my
race.
head was bobbing hard because
Oh
I
my
couldn't hold it
gosh.
up all the way. My eyes were like really droopy because I couldn't hold them open. And I just had to keep reiterating to myself something that I told you guys, something that means a lot to me, which is veni, vidi, vici. It's Roman Latin, and it's something that those three words were the entire letter that Julius Caesar wrote back to Rome after he went on a conquest that he was explicitly told not to because he would fail. And what it means is I came, I saw, I conquered. And I kept repeating that to myself because I was 1 mile away. And if it meant that I was going to pass out, then I was going to pass out. But I wasn't stopping. And I completed that race with one leg, which, Matt,
I was going to say, what's
gotta
that
give you
like?
props. Got to give you props. It's difficult.
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Never had to do that before.
It's funny when you describe it because that's literally how I run. Like my right leg, even though I've got the blade I have is not like the sprinter blades you see, like Oscar Pistorius used.
Mm-hmm.
And even those are, contrary to popular belief, those are nothing compared to a real human foot. But the blade I have is more of an endurance blade. It doesn't really give you any like spring push forward at all.
It's just there.
It just shock absorbs basically. And so, yeah, like that's exactly how you described it was exactly how I run. I have almost no push off with my right leg and almost everything's coming from my left leg.
And I'm a very extreme form runner, as you guys have noted and pointed out multiple times.
Yeah.
I lean a lot into my run, and a lot of my weight is on my toes, so that wasn't possible for me with one leg. So like I was running almost flat-footed, so my arches were hitting. I was feeling so much pain in my arch because that's not what my foot is accustomed to. Like, it's meant to absorb the shock in the arch. Instead, I'm planting my arch, and it's just going all the way up my leg, making it worse.
Yeah, you're used to using every single muscle fiber and everything available to you into every step to help generate as much speed and power as possible.
Yeah.
So when that goes away, it would totally throw everything off.
And especially like road races, when you're running on pavement like you are in that one, it absorbs a lot of the shock and gets it away from the upper part of your leg. So when that shock is going all the way up your leg, it just destroys your muscles.
Yeah.
When you feel every bit of every shock, it is killer, especially when you're not accustomed to it. Like I was not accustomed to that. I've always been a form runner. I've always ran on the balls of my feet. So when I'm striking my entire foot and it's just jolting all the way up my body, every step was horrible. And I ended up finishing with not a great time. It was under 2 hours, which is about, honestly, 20 minutes slower than what I wanted it to be. And my last mile was absolutely atrocious. I ran like an 11-minute mile. Like I was literally dragging myself. And I crossed the finish line. I was like, why does it hurt so bad? Why? What is going on right now? But I finished, which is a feat in itself. Not to just finish walking a marathon or a half marathon, but to finish maintaining a running form or pace, because a running form is running. Even if you're getting passed by people walking, if you're maintaining a running form, you're still training your muscles for that running. So even if you maintain that, that is still a much harder feat everyone can walk a marathon. Well, a half marathon. Everyone can walk a half marathon. But to run it or running form through it, it takes time and dedication and training and a lot of pain. So the fact that I finished, I pat myself on the back. But the fact that I just barely slithered under the 2-hour mark, I beat myself up for. I do. And we actually got to that race a little late, so I took off because they parked us
Almost 2 miles away.
We
So you get in some extra training.
so
That's all.
Oh,
far.
yeah. It was fantastic.
Extra training.
Walked up and they're like, "Oh, are you with the half marathon?" Yeah. Oh, it already started.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Didn't hear the gunshot.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
so like every corner we went around, it was like, oh, it's around this corner. No, it's around this corner. So
Finally
that
get
for
down there.
like 2 miles. And I looked down at my watch and I said, guys, I'm going to start jogging down there because it's getting close to time and I'll get a good warm up in. And I got to the back of the walkers when the gun went off.
Yeah.
And I was cruising. So really, I ran like 15 miles.
Yeah.
Technically.
Extra training.
So,
I like it.
But because of that, my finishing time was off compared to my watch time, which is when I crossed the starting line to the finish line. So my watch time was hour 56. My official time was like an hour 58.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with the official time because in a way it is our fault that we wasn't down there. But also maybe park us
A little
not
closer.
2 miles away from the start line.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's those things you never know what you're going to get into with the parking situation in any big race that way.
It was wild. Like,
Yeah.
I had to, much like the first 5K I ran with you guys, I had to weave through so many people and exert so much energy.
They had the 5-mile race start, I would say, only a half hour into the half marathon. And so you had people that were, we were getting to, JD and myself were there at, half an hour in. So that would have been about 2.5 coming up on 3 miles. And of course the 5-mile runners are going a bit quick, faster. And with us starting already, JD and I started, 4 or 5 minutes late. And so they were just coming through and really getting heavy on traffic. But then for the people that were up front, like Andrew and the other individuals that had much better times, they were coming back, into, through mile 5.5, 6, while we're hitting 2.5, 3. And it's just one, 2-way bicycle path. That's what we got. And you have it was just countless people. And then you had the 5-mile individuals passing us, it was a bit of a nightmare
Until about the halfway point of the race, you were fighting to get
until
through and around people.
Well, because the 5-mile people would finish, obviously, and they would go off onto that loop that came around to the finish line. That you passed the finish line once, twice, and then a third time before you finally finished it. So it's just brutal.
Teasing you the entire time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Bananas, dude. They were sitting there.
I was not just bananas. They had bagels and cream cheese. Carbs, man.
I didn't know
Carbs.
that.
Yeah. Oh, I found them.
Oh.
Carbs
It's
staring
supplied
right at
by Cleveland Bagel Company too.
Oh, nice.
Not sponsored. Not sponsored.
They're fantastic.
They are awesome.
When I had a lot of carbs back in the day, Mikey and I would go there a couple of times. Yeah, they're fantastic bagels.
But yeah, so I ended up, and this is partially why I know for a fact my muscles ended up quitting on me, was my first half of the half marathon was under a 7-minute pace. Just because I was trying to get away from people. I didn't want to get stuck. And I kept looking down my watch. I was like, man, I'm going too fast. I just got to get to this clearing. And I got to the clearing and I was still surrounded. I was like, get to the next clearing, I guess. And it happened until, people who aren't competitive were like, oh, I can't keep this up. So they would fall off. And then now finally I'm up there, but I'm like, I need to slow down.
Right.
because, my goal pace to hit the time was about a 7:45, and I'm under a 7 right now. Like, I'm running with somebody got like a hour 15, and he got first place, and I was like, he started 2 minutes before me, and I could almost touch him at the halfway point. I was like, I am in the wrong spot right now, because he was averaging 5s.
Yeah. Someone that finished top 10 actually passed JD and I obviously pretty quick, and because he also started, he must have started, or he definitely started late, and he was a really, really, really cool guy. As soon as he passed it, he was just like, "Hey, great job, guys! Keep it up, keep going." And I'm
he's like sprinting past you,
just flying right by us, and I was like, "That's awesome." Yeah. I really appreciated that, because there were a couple other very fast individuals that went past us that were just in their zone, and that's you boo. But this one dude, he was just like, "Oh, keep going." I looked at JD and I was like, "Heck yeah, man!" I'm like, "Oh, that's great." So I kept jogging for another 5 minutes and then started walking again, but. It was incredible to see the true athletes just starting to come back by for the half marathon.
Absolutely,
there were just those first before, because there were a couple spots where like it would the people coming back towards you kind of like looped off for a little bit and then came back into the path, and so we kind of like it just so happened that we that happened when the kind of like 5th through 20 or 30th people were not in sight, but the first 5 or 6 people we got to see coming back our direction. And seeing that kind of athlete just in motion,
it's a beautiful thing when you see people like that.
They were gorgeous people.
Yeah, when they're that locked into just the rhythm, the pace, the everything. It's
and
a
at this
beautiful
point,
their physiques.
Yeah. And at this point in time, I am like 3-4 weeks now into actually training. At that point, I was 2 weeks into actually training, and even those people would call me a psychopath because they're multiple months into training for this event, and I was just up there with them for no reason other than I wanted to get away from people. And I was running off the coattails of one guy, and he just sparks up a conversation, as endurance athletes do, and he's like, "So how long you been preparing for this?" I was like, "I heard about it last week." And he's like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, been training for about 2 weeks, heard about it last week, so I'm just kind of here." And he's like, "I've been training for months, dude. Why are you up here?" And I was like, I want to get away from people. And I think he took that as like, I don't want to talk to you, which was not true. If you're listening, I'm sorry. Not true. I enjoyed our conversation, but he kind of stopped talking to me for the rest of the race.
Yeah. Well, some people are different. I'm a guy that, like, it's not that I don't enjoy to talk to people. I just can't talk to people when I'm running, because then my breath rhythm gets off and then my heart rate goes crazy. Right. So yeah, I just don't have the I don't have the cardiovascular capabilities to talk to people when I'm running.
I'm blessed with a pretty low resting heart rate. I have this Garmin that I've had for about 3-4 weeks now, and I found out my resting heart rate when I'm not doing anything is like a 49.
That's good.
I hit 63 in the hospital the other day. I was very proud
that's
of
a
that.
false elevation. You're probably in the 50s.
And then like when I'm jogging and doing easy workouts, it's like it gets into the 60s and 70s. So I'm very naturally blessed with that.
Listen to this guy.
So
I know I'm like the 170s.
Right.
So when I was running that race, I was just barely starting to crack into the hundreds at that point, and it got a little bit higher further into the race. But at that point, I was just cracking in the hundreds, and this guy, he wanted to talk, but you could tell he was kind of having a hard time. And I was just talking to him like it was a casual conversation. And he's like, what is wrong with you? I was like, I like pain, man.
Yeah, having a good time.
I'm just chilling.
It was a fairly quaint race. There were certainly, the back half was much more quiet. I mean, yes, we did go underneath Interstate 480 and 77 or 71, one of those two. But outside of the road noise from those, there was a nice like 2.5 mile portion just right beside a little creek. That was really nice. Saw some turtles hanging out on some logs. That was a good time. And that's where a couple of hydration stations were. And then there was another portion along an old canal. It was like 8.5 mile was the turnaround before you came back for that back half. And it was fairly tranquil. I really enjoyed that for my first half. It was a lot of fun.
I'm really glad you enjoyed it because, the more you enjoy them, the more you get into it. So I'm glad to hear that.
Oh, I'm excited to do the next one. Like
Yeah.
I'm pumped, and my body's not ready, but I'm mentally ready
Parkersburg,
to do it.
man.
However, I'm also super jealous because I did not have the same experience on the way back. Up and down those sharp hill bridges, I was
my right quad was twitching.
Yeah.
Like visually twitching, and it kept locking up on me. And JD's like, "You got to push through it, man." He's like, "I'm sorry, but
that's just the only answer."
He's just like, it's gonna continue to happen. So he's like, "You can stretch it out." And like, I'm sitting there like standing up, trying to like pull it up and like stretch it out, and then get down on the ground. And I'm like, "Okay, this really is not helping." So I was just like, "All right, we're just gonna keep going."
Yeah.
So I switched from, because at the stations they had water and Gatorade. And at first I was just doing the water, and I had the water in my pack. But after a while, I was just like, I need Gatorade, potassium.
I did the same thing. So I did water on the way up and Gatorade on the way back, just because that's when I finally started to feel drained from being an idiot and running under a 7 for the first half of it.
Yeah. There was a portion I had a 9-minute mile. My fault.
Heck yeah.
The fault. Well, I hurt myself trying to get a 9, and what was it, for about a half a mile, and JD catches up with me and he's like, "Hey, slow down." And I'm like,
"Stop it."
Why? He's like, "We're in a 9-minute pace, Austin. Stop." And I was just like, I apologized to him because I was like, that's because my sugar came on.
I felt the runner high.
BPMs went high, and I went high, and then it didn't work out too well. And I definitely paid for that, because then miles 9 to 11.5, that's where the twitching started occurring. That was not fun.
Oh man,
Yeah.
On the
It
way
always
back,
feels good in the moment. It always feels good in the moment till you're you're paying for it later.
We were soaring like eagles, and then he just absolutely apprehended that progress, and I was like, "JD, how could you?" And then about a mile later, I was just like, "JD, thank you."
You understood.
I had very much the same experience. The first half, I felt like I was flying. I felt great. I was like, why did I put this 740 restraint on myself? Like, I'm cruising right now. Let's just go for broke. And then on the way back, and I hit that first rounded bridge where it just goes almost straight up, and I was like, oh my god, I hate myself. Why'd I do this?
The vision of Frisch's Big Boy is what got JD all excited, and I'm just looking. I'm like, I don't care what restaurant's right there. This is not a good time. Not a good time. And it was windy enough, and it was a suspension bridge, pedestrian suspension bridge, but it was starting to move. And the first bridge we hit was where the majority of the faster individuals were coming over the bridge the opposite direction. So there was like 30 people on this bridge. It's shaking up and down and stuff like that. I'm freaking out as I'm trying to catch my breath. Those are some interesting moments, but it was a really
blast,
good race.
though. It was a blast.
It was a really good
The
race.
first half was a blast. Second half, I hated every minute of it, but
God, it was a good time. It was a good time. I cried.
Oh yeah, you will.
I did too. Yeah, I did too.
Mm.
Out of pain.
If you're not crying at the end of a marathon distance run, yeah,
it was mile
you
12.
can go harder.
I started going, and then I heard JD kind of catching up. I was just like, okay, no, we're good. And he's like, everything okay? I'm like, I am great.
Oh yeah, I was crying partially out of like hatred for myself, how much I was hurting because of how stupid I was for the first half of that race. I was crying. It was hurting. I was like, what is wrong with you? I just got where I was so drained, overly emotional, overly sensitive.
Yeah.
First half of the race, my music was blaring. I was cruising. Second half of the race, I turned my music way down. I was like, I don't want to hear this right now. I just want to be in my feelings, man.
Yeah. You get there. But so that all brings us to May 18th, Washington County Relay for Life.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what's going down at Relay for Life this year. Team Impossible Performance, we're going to be there. And Andrew's going to be there doing something pretty special to help kids battle cancer. So let us know what's going on there and what gave you this idea, what gave you the vision for this, and why is it happening?
Yeah, so I dropped a hint about it earlier. It's a 6.5 hour event. So for the entire portion of that event, I'm going to be running nonstop. Well, maybe some bathroom breaks because
You're allowed to use the restroom.
don't want to pee myself.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, nonstop. And it came from this part of me that wanted to run from Ohio to Los Angeles. It's something that I already started planning out. I started budgeting it out. I was going to run nonstop during the day, stop at night at a hotel, eat, sleep, get up, do it again. Someone's done it before. The fastest they've done it is just under a year. I was going to try to do it in 100 days less. Yeah. Because he did it very much at a snail's pace, and I was training. I was getting my mileage way up there.
Mm-hmm.
I was to the point where I was like, I can do this. But the money, it was unfeasible because, I'd have to have the money. And then on top of that, I'd have to have money to take care of my family while I was out of work. Because it's a very long-term event. And then through running with you guys and spending time with you guys, I found the Bupri Relay for Life. And when I grew up, in high school especially, Relay for Life was an event that they had during high school hours. They'd get the community and the high school out there, and it was a track meet. Like, you would sign up for track events. You would race adults, kids alike. You would pay to do your events, all this stuff, and it was for the same thing, raising money for cancer. And somewhere along the way, it got watered down to the point where, while it is still about raising money for cancer, it was less about also promoting health and running. It was less of a relay. The Relay for Life became just the for life. They lost their relay. And so I was like, well, how long is this event? And I did some research into it, and it was from 3 to 9:30. And my coworkers said, yeah, I'm going to be one of the two bands that's playing there. I was like, so this is more of just an event? And he's like, yeah, there's going to be food. There's going to be live food. There's going to be luminaries and stuff like that you can donate to raise money for. There's going to be two live bands. One of them is going to give us a shout out. The second band, just saying. But I was really disappointed because, yes, we want to raise money for cancer. Everyone in this room has been impacted by cancer. For you guys, you have fought it. For me, I have witnessed everyone around me fight it. And in the community I'm in, I've witnessed and am witnessing 4 children that I know who have fought it and are fighting it. I live in a community of like 2,000 people. That's adults. The school has like 400 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So 1 out of every 100 kids in this district is fighting childhood cancer. That is unacceptable numbers.
Yeah.
Unacceptable. And so I wanted to do something that brought me and our message to something that we already believe in. And so I said, you know what? Let's go all the way. Let's take it to the furthest extent, because whether people like it or not, they want to see crazy stuff. And, 5Ks, they're cool. They're not crazy. Marathons, people do them all the time. I haven't met someone who's done an ultra around here. I haven't met someone who said, I'm going to run for 6 hours and I'm not going to stop.
Yeah.
And
unless you run 6 hours incredibly slowly, like I did in the marathon last year. But anyway, that's beside the point.
yeah,
I've run for 6 hours. It may have been at like an 18-minute pace, but it's different.
Yeah, but so we got in contact with them, and they said, we're not going to let that happen. We're not going to let you just come out here, run when we're not having a running event. We're just going to give the money to cancer. No. Instead, you're going to come out here, you're going to promote health, you're going to run for 6.5 hours, and all of the money you raise, through whatever way you decide, we're going to give it specifically to your message. Everything you raise at Team Impossible is going to Nationwide Children's. So we're not even branching out to this group that, we don't know where the money's going.
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, it's going for cancer, but what's the odds that it's going to affect someone you know? Whereas now, through us, there is a very high chance that someone you know, or someone you can know, is going to get affected by the money we raise. Because even way down here in Southeast Ohio, I know hundreds of people who go to Nationwide Children's. I've met 4 kids who are my heroes, who go to Nationwide's and fight the hardest fight of their lives. A fight that I don't think I could fight. And they do it with a smile on their face, like it doesn't affect them every day. So the fact that they said that every bit of money that you raise, however you want to raise it, we're going to let you take it to what you stand for, directly to what you already raise money for. We're not going to let it reach out of your realm. You're not going to have to sidestep what you do to do this event. You're going to do this event, and it's going to benefit what you already do. Which is, when she told us that, I almost got very emotional. Because as much as it means to me to raise money for cancer in general, to raise money for youth cancer patients, people who, while no one deserves cancer, deserve it the least. People who have absolutely no reason to do anything but smile and learn and enjoy their youth, that have to fight this. And sometimes it blindsides them and changes their life forever, even if they beat it. People that shouldn't have to fight that, but you're going to make it just a little bit easier with every step that you take. Every lap that you finish, you get to make it a little bit easier, and you get to increase their chances of having a normal life. And they didn't have to do that. They could have just said, hey, thanks for coming out here. Thanks for the money you're raising. It's going to go to cancer. Good job. Mm-hmm. But they went out of their way and said, no, this is for the kids.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what's cool about it. Something that I didn't even know either is that Relay actually partners with different organizations, so that the money we raise as Team Impossible for Relay for Life will all go to pediatric cancer research. Now, it's not specifically going to Nationwide Children's Hospital. It's going to their partner Pediatric Cancer Research Fund with Relay, but it will be going to kids who, as we've said since the beginning, kids desperately need this money, this awareness, this research, because currently they're getting less than 1% of all research dollars raised, yet they're battling, in most cases, the most aggressive forms of cancer. And as Andrew said, they're, the people who, not that anybody should be battling this, but especially kids should not have to battle this disease. So we're trying to help bring more awareness, bring more fundraising dollars to help them in their fight against this horrible disease and against the impossible. So, man, we appreciate you coming on tonight. Appreciate you sharing your story with us. We appreciate everything you've done for us so far. And you guys are going to see a lot more of Andrew coming in the next months as we get through relay, come towards Columbus Marathon. He's going to be on our team running with us, helping us bring more children's champions than have ever been brought before to the Columbus Marathon. If you guys would like to learn how you can be a children's champion, how you can be a part of Team Impossible and everything we're doing, you don't even have to run the marathon with us. We certainly would love to have you, but there are ways to participate outside of that. Reach out to us at impossibleperformance.com. We're on all the social media platforms. Find out how you can be a part of what we're doing today. And we've also got some very, very exciting things in the work that Andrew and us are planning for 2025 as a way to really spread this message and raise dollars in a way that we've never done before. So stay tuned for that. More to come on that later. But as always, guys, we appreciate you listening. If you like what you're hearing here, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you like, what you'd like to see more of. We read all the comments ourselves. We respond to all of them ourselves. And we love to hear from you guys and see what you love about the show and see what you'd like to see more of. So as we go through this journey of the podcast and the media and everything else we're doing, the number one thing we always ask you guys to do is, if this story impacted you in some way and you know somebody else in your life who you think it could benefit, please share this episode with them, because we are in the business of human potential. We want to help everyone out there face the impossible in their lives and find their highest potential and even move one step beyond it. So please share this episode with someone you know that you think it could benefit. It helps us live out our message every single day. Yeah. And as always, want to give a quick shout out to King and Fifth hats. You always see me wearing one. Austin forgot his in the other room tonight.
I know. My head is naked. I don't like it.
It's weird, but
put some head clothes on. Pervert.
But no, King and Fifth, guys, we don't promote a lot of products on this show, and I'm very particular about my products, but they are far and beyond the best in the game as far as headwear is concerned. Whether you have a really small head or an extremely large head or anywhere in the middle, they have a hat that's perfectly suited for you. It can stand up to any occasion, whether it's training. This is actually the hat that I competed in the powerlifting meet in, and it still looks brand new. I just threw it through the washer one time, comes out perfect, and that's how all of their hats are. Check out their link in the show notes and use code Impossible Performance to get yourself a discount at checkout. And as always, guys, we want to thank you for being a part of what we do, being a part of our movement. I want to thank Andrew for coming on today, and we're going to keep moving forward, guys. We got a lot of exciting guests coming up, a lot of new things coming for you here in the near future. But if you would like to be a part of what Team Impossible, what Andrew's doing for Relay for Life, Washington County on May 18th, 2024, come out to Civitan Park in Belpre, Ohio from 3 to 9:30 p.m. We will be there. Andrew will be running the entire time. We are actually collecting pledges. So that's how we're raising money. We're collecting pledges for every lap Andrew can complete around this 3/4 mile track. We're collecting pledges of $1, $2, $5 per lap, or more if you would like to donate. There's a link in the show notes to that pledge sign up that you can help donate for each lap that Andrew runs, that all goes to childhood cancer research through Relay for Life. If you'd like to learn more about what Andrew's doing, we've got other videos published and linked, and we're going to be doing a lot more media regarding this event in the coming days and weeks as we get closer to Relay. And if you would like to come hang out with us, learn more about what we do at Team Impossible and Impossible Performance, come see us at Relay. We're going to have a table and a booth there. You'll be able to sign up for the Columbus Marathon, sign up to be a children's champion, or just come hang out and learn about what we are, who we are, what we're doing. And you can even come get some miles in with us because the whole team's going to be there. We're all going to be putting in miles with Andrew and seeing how many dollars we can raise again for kids. So, Andrew, thanks again for coming on tonight, man.
Yep.
Do you have anything else you wanted to leave people with?
Yeah, so one other thing we'll be doing is I'm going to be taking any amount donation flat rate. If you can, please do that, and we will have a plain white t-shirt there for you to put a survivor's name on or someone you've lost. That will be going to many of my training events. It'll be on many of our videos, so their names will be everywhere. And then finally, once that shirt is retired, after the Columbus Marathon, it's going to be hanging up right behind Matt, right here in the studio.
So it will be in the studio as soon as we can get it finished and looking a little nicer for you guys, which is coming soon. I promise you won't have to stare at this pegboard and concrete wall much longer.
Yeah, so if you can, please donate to that as well. If you can't donate or pledge to donate $1 per lap, because that could be a lot. Hoping it's a lot. If it's something that financially you can't do, there's still a way you can help. So, please, everyone's been affected by cancer. Everyone. If you have a name, it doesn't have to be a child. Come out, give anything, and put somebody's name on that shirt. It would mean a lot to me. It would mean a lot to all of us here. If you need any help, whether it's physically, you want to get better at running, you want to be a better athlete in any way, or mentally, you're going through a hard time. Many of us here have gone through hard times. Don't hesitate to reach out, especially to me for any reason. My line is always open. You can get in contact with me in many, many ways at any hour. I promise you, I will respond. I know what it's like to go through hard times. I know what it's like to feel like Atlas, like the world is just bearing down on your shoulders and you're losing strength. So please, if you're struggling, you need help of any kind, just reach out. Appreciate that, man. Awesome, brother. You got anything else?
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Great episode, man. Appreciate you being here. And we look forward to seeing all of you at Relay for Life, Civitan Park, Belpre, Ohio, May 18th, so we can all face the impossible, be impossible, and do the impossible together for kids. So thank you guys, as always, for listening. We love having you be a part of everything we do here at Impossible Performance, because ultimately that is our goal and our vision for everything we do. We are striving to build a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Thank you for listening, and as always, be impossible.
Scene.
That's going to be on the outro.